Welcome to this lesson, which is exploring the economic conditions that contributed to the American Revolution War. There are numerous parliamentary acts that were forced upon the colonists in order to promote British control of the region, but also to raise funds for Great Britain. Most of these came in the form of taxes or duties that the colonists had to pay in order to import items that they needed for daily life or for trade purposes. The colonists viewed these new policies as increasingly overbearing, so the seeds of revolution were planted and watered regularly with frustration about injustice. Why does this matter? The American Revolution is unique from other modern revolutions because its roots are not in the colonists being deprived economically or because of oppression of one class by a more elite group. The reaction in the form of war was the result of 40 years of mistreatment and abuse, the policies of which were especially important in the colonists' motives to fight for independence. One of the primary reasons that the colonists were so frustrated was that they felt their liberty was denied as a result of British tyranny. They felt there was no opportunity to air their grievances towards the way that the government was operated, which happened 3,000 miles from their own location. A series of policies enacted by that government gave the colonists increasing ammunition to revolt. The following timeline helps to discuss some of the critical policies that colonists felt encroached on their rights. The first of these is the 1763 Molasses Act. A high tax was put on items that were imported from the British West Indies to the new colonies. This included molasses, sugar, and rum. The British government was able to earn extra income to protect their own interests while forcing the colonists to pay up or go without. The proclamation of 1763 actually limited where on the North American continent colonists were able to go. They were prohibited from purchasing any land west of the Appalachian Mountains, and troops were sent in to help enforce this new rule. Colonists were thus stuck with the everyday reality of British rules and taxes. So not only were they responsible for paying taxes on items that were being imported for, their daily life and their trade, but they were also not allowed to go to certain regions of North America, so they felt very trapped and restricted. The Sugar Act of 1764 has to do with the outcome of the French and Indian War. The British really suffered economically in fighting the French and Indian War. It was very expensive for them. So a number of these policies and acts were put forth as a way to help replenish the British coffers because the British Treasury had been hit so severely by the French and Indian War and needing to defend this new continent that was also geographically quite large. So this replenishment came in the form of the Sugar Act initially, and under this law, taxes were levied on a number of things like indigo, wines, coffee, and textiles. So a lot of the products that the colonists were importing and using. Under the Currency Act of 1764, this forbid colonists from making or minting their own money. This forced them to trade in British currency instead. So once again, this is decisions that were being made thousands of miles from the new colonies, but the colonists actually had no say in the development or the enforcement of these policies. So it helped to contribute, from 1763 onwards, there were just a series of acts that were really restricting where the colonists could go, what they had to do, what they were allowed to use as currency, and how much they had to pay on various products. And finally, the Stamp Act of 1765. The British government saw a need for more income as a result of having to protect and defend colonies that were located so far from home. This would help balance the cost of providing the military defense. The Stamp Act was in 1765, so bear in mind that these acts and policies had been coming down since 1763, and the purpose of this act was to tax newspapers, pamphlets, legal documents, playing cards, even almanacs. So basically a wide range of printed products were now had to be paid tax on. And if you were caught violating this act, you faced court without a jury. So not only do colonists not have the opportunity to share input on the development of these laws or the enforcement of these laws, there was no jury of your peers at this time that allowed you to have some semblance of a fair trial. So this further contributed to colonist aggravation towards British policies. The colonists at this point were so fed up with taxes and demanding British rules that they started to boycott British goods. This forced many of these stamp distributors to actually abandon their posts. And finally, the Stamp Act was actually repealed as a result of its failure in the colonies because of the colonist reaction. By this time, many individuals living in the colonies saw that these acts were not to protect colony interests, but rather to protect British interests. Many of the economic acts that we've talked about here had consequences that were felt throughout the colonies. They served as reasons to be irritated with British rule and helped to build camaraderie among the residents of the colonies. Most colonists were united in their belief that these tyrannical policies had to come to an end by 1765, and the British at this point in time were struggling with how to manage this mounting anger from the colonists.